You're tuned into the It's Real podcast with your hosts, Kayla, Kallander, and Andrew Yaggie. Each week, we'll talk about what happens behind the scenes working full-time in real estate and share with you real-life stories, our successes and failures as we work to help consumers and industry professionals reach their real estate and real-life goals. Here we go.
It's episode 54 of the It's Real podcast. I'm Kayla Kallander, and I'm a mortgage lender.
And I'm Andrew Yaggie. I'm a real estate agent.
Hi, Andrew Yaggie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing real good, Kayla Kallander. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. We made it. We did it. I feel like this week flew by. Short week, but I feel like it just all kind of compounds into 4 days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, historically, this week, at least in Minnesota, for the most part, is back to school week. So, my two older girls restarted school. So it's actually really great to get back into a routine. And it's hard to believe the week's already in the books. But, you know, I felt like historically this week is really quiet in real estate, you know, kind of the week leading up to Labor Day. And then Labor Day this week, next week's a little quieter, you know, as people kind of get back into the fall groove, changing gears. And then things get really busy. I hadn't really thought about it before, but I was talking to kind of our main closer at the title company, and she said October is always their busiest month every year. What have you been seeing for activity?
In the last couple of weeks, getting clients on the phone or getting financials or getting them to finish an application has been difficult because they're tied up with back to school, kids. Like, it's a lot, right? To change your schedule. And on top of it, a lot of people, I mean, as you know, and you witness, they're getting their boats off the water. They're closing up the cabin, football starting, you know, volleyball starting. And so I've noticed it's just been quieter, not necessarily people not reaching out, but having the conversations, finishing the apps, or they're kind of halting the search. And a lot of people don't want to be dealing with listing their home when they're trying to get their kids, you know, lunch is now packed and back to school. So it's a little quieter in the last week or two.
Yeah, I had a lender call me the other day and said, "Hey, I'm hungry. The phone hasn't rang yet today. Let's go out and have some lunch." And unfortunately, I was out doing a little bit of farming. Sugar beet harvest is around the corner, so we're doing a little pre-pile, a little pre-lift, and so I couldn't quite join him. But we've actually seen. So I've usually seen it really quiet right about now, and actually we've had just so many people calling us, Kayla, like, "Hey, come list me." Or, "Hey, we want to get pictures because we think we're going to do something in the spring." A lot of people really thinking about their real estate goals. You know, again, some of the buyers are a little bit, you know, kind of waiting in the wings, kind of waiting to see what happens, you know, with rates and everything else, which we'll talk about. But you brought up boats and lakes. So is the Kallander Oasis retreat out on the lake, is that closed down for the year? Is the boat out, or you're still going out there?
We're still going. We have our boat being stored October 12th. Okay. So we get out there. We'll stay out there. This is a crazy fact, I guess, not stat, but I looked at my calendar and I have not had a weekend at home in Fargo since April. And I'm like, no wonder my house isn't clean. Like, I'm so excited because this weekend we're not going to the lake. We've got a wedding in town. And I'm just so excited to get stuff done. I know, like, we love our summers, but we just go so hard. We're like every weekend at the lake doing all the things. And it's just nice to be able to stay in Fargo for a weekend and just get caught up on the day-to-day. So yeah, we'll still get out there, but it's crazy. Last weekend, you know, when you're taking a walk or you're looking around, everybody's like, "Hey, I'm out," because they've got kids back in school and they've got life starting back in their towns. So it's hard to have that balance of the lake and be in town. So
coming from a farm family, we always have good intentions. And I feel like it happens every year where it's like, okay, you know, we're going to leave the boats and everything in until, you know, after Labor Day, because, hey, we're going to get back out. And then everyone's busy with farm work and school and whatever else and never gets back out there. But yeah, the lakes were really busy just this last weekend. I was doing more real estate around the lakes than enjoying it, but it was really quite busy. And speaking of weddings, you said you got a wedding this weekend. It seems to me that I think I saw you and Taryn just celebrated an anniversary. Is that right?
We did have our 10-year anniversary this year.
You did?
We did, yes. I'm trying to think anything. I think that's it. I think is that what you're talking
I
about?
think it's
Oh,
11.
that's from our engagement. Oh my god.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. So then
I
it is
definitely
10
have
years.
on some of those things pop up and I'm like, how do those pop up? But yeah, crazy.
Usually most of the Facebook posts, from a decade or 15 years ago are I look at and they're more cringeworthy. I feel
I
like it's like,
know.
why would
Oh,
I say something like that?
I know. I'm
You
like,
know?
we were over tanned and we were, oh my gosh, just you look back and it's like, what was I thinking? But you know what? In 10 years, we're going to look back at this podcast and be like, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? Probably not. But
But you know what, Kayla? Obviously, this isn't reaching the masses, but it is getting out
no,
there. And as I think you were just telling the story of someone that reached out and wanted to work with you directly, and I have a lot of very similar conversations or people that reach out that just like to be in the know with what's going on in real estate.
And I think too, there's this credibility factor, right? Like we're here to educate because it's not the consumer's fault that they're not educated. There's really nothing out there aside from hopping on something like this or podcasts or webinars because the media will only tell you what the media wants to tell you. And a lot of times it's fear-based and doom and gloom. So I feel like clients really they're like very grateful for these conversations we have even if they catch a small portion of it they want to be in the know whether they're
Mhm.
buying or not they want to know.
Right. So, Kayla, speaking of back to school, back to school week for a lot of kids, if not this week, the week prior, or a couple of weeks prior for some private schools. But, it wasn't all that many years ago that we were going back to school at NDSU and going to college for the first time. And this made me think of it as I came upon this article from Inman talking about dorm decor goes luxe as students opt for high-end designers. And just the fact that students and their families are spending about $87 billion
What?
for back to school items this year. Think about that. Isn't that a huge number?
That blows my mind. Like we were going to Walmart and Target and getting like plastic this and plastic that and maybe a beanbag chair, but I mean I didn't even have a laptop my first quarter. I know you did because you were like selling stocks in some of our classes. I remember like, who is this guy? But I look back, it's crazy.
Do you remember the day you moved into NDSU?
Yeah, I do. I
Tell me
do.
about it.
It was North
Quick
Weibel,
recap. Yeah.
North Weibel, and I was living with Kelsey Marjoram, who's now Kelsey
Oh, yeah.
Smith. We played sports together in high school. So I had that comfort level of someone I knew. Do you remember Kelsey?
I do remember
Yeah.
Kelsey. Yep.
People thought we were sisters, so that was
Mhm.
fun and cool. We had a good time, but it was crazy and busy. My parents helped. But I mean, the first day that I was there, I was with my sister Bethany and all of her friends. So I was very grateful for having people in Fargo, but I was really kind of removed from the dorm lifestyle because I knew other people. But
Right.
I mean, it took a day to move in and we had nothing like that, nothing fancy at
Right.
all.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, no, I remember it like it was yesterday moving into Stockbridge and
Ah,
my mom being really emotional, having to leave and moving in with Tarek, who was my roommate, who we're still friends with him and his wife Summer are in Fargo, doctors at Sanford. So fun to still stay in touch with them. But I do remember going there and I didn't know the people in Fargo like you did. I mean, certainly had some relatives there, but actually me and two other guys ended up you'd think we'd stick around college our first night, but what did we do? We found someone to buy us a case of beer, and we went up to Monoma and gambled at the casino all night, and got a hotel room up there, and that was kind of the first night of college. Which, in hindsight, it's like, why would you do that? But no, there weren't any of these designer anything.
no.
And in fact, they're talking about a lot of people shopping online, followed by department stores and discount stores, moving away from IKEA and getting the opposite of fast furniture. So people are really looking for
Oh, wow.
trendy things. So the economy must be doing better than we think, Kayla. Either that or this is just testament to all of the credit card and other debt out there.
I was just thinking they're all living in debt. I had a friend that said one time, she made a comment like, that person is clearly doing really well. And I said, or they're really great at having a lot of debt. You just never know. But I mean, we see it constantly, but that is a bougie not hotel, bougie dorm room for sure. Not what I had.
So what do you think? So this article, and we won't spend much more time on this, but it talks about this New York Times article, how there's an individual, a consultant, who will go deck your dorm room out. And what does their average dorm room project generally cost?
Are you asking me what I think it
I'm
costs?
asking you. Yeah. What do they spend?
I'm just gonna go with 1,000.
$7,000 to $8,000.
What? Think of all
Seven
the
to
dogs you could rescue. Oh my
seven to
goodness.
$8,000, Kayla. Though costs can vary depending on custom elements like luxury light fixtures, custom fabrics for curtains, and bespoke furniture pieces.
Though,
I,
I think that we're living in a world of aesthetics and people are on TikTok and Instagram and these young kids are seeing this. And so it actually doesn't surprise me. You go into these dorm rooms and they're just pretty rough. So it doesn't surprise me, but I guarantee you that they're not paying for that. The parents probably are. So
right.
someone is. But that's a fun fact though. And it's perfectly timed for back to school.
Absolutely.
I
Well,
love
Kayla,
that.
shifting back towards housing and homeownership, I came across this article just today where it
Mhm.
talked about the data points to another mortgage boom if rates continue to tumble. So if rates
Mhm.
fall by another percentage point, the firm that put this together sees home buyers' monthly payment dropping by $236 and nearly 7.2 million homeowners in the money for a refinance. So that
Mhm.
tells me we know Kayla's going to have some business next year, but
Yeah.
what are you seeing in the mortgage world?
You know, I'm seeing so much. I've had more conversations in the last month than I feel like, I had, 2 years ago in a month. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of people are on the fence when they're buying, and a lot of people are on the fence when they're listing. There's been a lot of conversations around, well, the election, but I really don't think the consumer nor we know what's going to happen with this election. And I feel like it's almost an excuse, not a bad excuse, but people are like, I want to wait. But other people are like, nope, I'm going forward. I know that either way it's a good decision because in the past 7 out of 8 elections, the prices of homes have gone up substantially, and I think that a lot of people are thinking, "Well, I'm gonna wait for rates to drop," but the truth is, yeah, I think rates will drop, but by how much, we don't know. It could be an eighth, it could be a quarter. In terms of the refinance, like you just showed, what that means for buyers, not just people refinancing, is you bring in this whole group of people refinancing. Guess what happens? Lenders get busy, appraisers get busy, title companies get busy, insurance companies get busy. And so that also puts some pressure on our ability to close as quickly when there's not as many appraisals being done or title companies being inundated. So when I see that, I initially think, that is great. Rates are dropping, but it's also there's a negative point that comes with that, and that's the crazy busyness. Because right now we're seeing seller concessions, we're seeing quick closings, like we're seeing everyone, taking your time to give really great experiences. But as that shifts, I think I read an article that said for every 1% rates drop, 3 million buyers come back in. Buyers, that doesn't even include refinanced people. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's an accurate article, and I think that if people are on the fence, it's probably time to really think about, what does this look like now if I buy, and what does this look like potentially if I wait? And the cost of waiting could be a lot higher than the cost of buying now.
Sure. No, that's well said. And I've really been enjoying, kind of the quicker closings. I mean, I think we got one done recently in about 25 days. 30 days is not unusual. It's been really, really awesome. This article was also interesting, Kayla, kind of pointing out here where declining mortgage rates and slowing home price appreciation have boosted affordability in many markets and made refinancing a tempting option for 2.5 million homeowners. And then also talking about mortgage rates are already down 1.5 percentage points from the post-pandemic high of 7.83%, which we saw in October 2023, and affordability is really as good as it's been. So I think you're spot on, talking about, why wait and the cost of waiting.
And
And
I think too that 1.5, I always tell people, you might not have locked in at the highest. They're saying that from the highest to where it's at, you may have locked in here. And so when you're thinking of refinancing, it's so important to have what we call like a strike rate. At what rate does it make sense? And do you want to save the $150 now? Or do you want to wait and see what happens and potentially save 250? It's really not as simple as what are your rates and can I refi? It's what are your goals? When would you want to close? Do you want to skip a payment? What about your escrow? Do you want to escrow? There's so many conversations that go into that. So if anyone's listening and they're like, do I refi? Call me. Let's have a consultation. But it's just so much more than what's the rate today? What's the payoff, et cetera.
And even more than that, I love you and your approach, like how you actually sit down and get to know the client and be like, hey, let's look at the big picture. Let's look at your debt. Let's look at everything that you have going on here. And let's see if we can't even, get you in a better position, if you are refinancing or if you're buying and, play with those numbers a little bit and help people get into a better financial position.
Well, I think that in order to, I always say prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. For me to tell you what you're able to afford, to tell you what your cash flow looks like, I need to understand your full picture, just like when you go to the doctor, just like when realtors have buyer consults. What are you looking for? What's important to your family? It's the same thing with lenders. And if that conversation isn't being had, then it's really hard for a lender to really give true, accurate, helpful advice.
Sure. Kayla, what are you seeing this week in the market rate-wise, kind of as an average?
We're seeing them flatter. However, right now there is information guidance to float with the jobs report coming out. You'll see 30-year fixed 6.35. Andy, remember when we were talking that this was in the sevens? Like that's excellent, and that doesn't even include if you're paying down the rate. If you want to pay money, meaning when you upgrade to first class, you pay money for something better. We can get you in the fives. Same with FHA. I've been kind of hovering around low fives for FHA. Not even talking about bond programs or first-time homebuyer programs. So you'll see a 30-year FHA is shown as a national average of 5.72. I've been locking people. I locked someone the other day at 5.5. And again, it's all based on credit and primary residence. What's it all involved? Debt to income, all those things. But it's looking better, and we're feeling hopeful. And it hasn't been enough to really push people. But when I see where we were at and what their rate could have been, it's definitely easier for clients to afford because a lot of people are at their top, meaning they're at the top of their debt to income. And it's harder for us to get people approved because consumer spending is so much higher, and that weighs in. So this relief of some mortgage rates a little bit has helped people even just be approved for what they want to afford, not necessarily have a cheaper payment.
Has there been much change in the North Dakota housing rates?
Not a huge shift, but they too have come down. Thank you. This is helpful. You'll see right now, I'm seeing a lot of first home and roots, but right now they're down a little bit, about 0.1 from, I would say, the lowest that I've seen. The North Dakota roots start, which is for repeat buyers or for people that have make over a certain income limit. I remember not too long ago that 7 and 7.25 was in the 8s. And so when you see 4.65 and 5.15, those are so awesome for people that are in scenarios, have the income limits, first-time home buyers. I mean, those are great rates. And I don't think we have anything to complain about at that point.
Kayla, you talked a little bit ago about jobs reports. And I think you had an article came across from the Washington Post kind of across your desk. So talk about that a little bit and how that's going to affect us.
So many people just think, the Fed is what impacts mortgage rates. And truthfully, when you follow this, you'll see employers added 142,000. So if we see less jobs added, that is good for interest rates. And so what we're watching today is what's happening. And so you'll see, can you scroll down a little bit? Unemployment rate they speak about, but what really, really impacts it is that jobs report, because Andy, that there's been this goal of trying to slow down the market, to cool it down. Interest rates have increased, right? And it's worked. And, I won't get into the whole how I feel about the inaccuracy of the jobs report, because that was interesting in itself. I don't know if that had to do with an administration thing, but the jobs report, as you know, was off for the last couple months. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I did hear about it, and that it was, yeah, it was
Yeah,
maybe artificially influenced by
yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, and so today is telling. I have a few clients that are floating. Rates came down just a smidge this week for a couple clients in their scenarios. Today, I'm feeling confident that we'll see a little dip, and hopefully that continues through the month of September.
Sure, sure.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will. It's going to be an interesting rest of the year. And still just kind of all over the board, about rates overall. And I mean, I know everyone is hoping for, really a big cut. Will it
Mhm.
be a big cut? Will it not?
And at what point when I'm talking to my clients, I'll ask them, what rate do you want? And they can't tell me. So I'm like,
A good
what
one.
yeah, what payment do you want? Like, what's
Yeah.
the goal here? Because if you're looking at a $400,000 home and your goal is this payment based on this, the rate needs to be around here. But it's really about educating the client to say, hey, here's where they're at today. If you want to be here, we'll watch, but is that going to really impact if you buy or not? And then you have to find the right home at that time. And then you have to have an accepted offer. And then you have to go through inspection. So timing the market is just so hard that right now I'm like, if you buy, the price is permanent. The price that you pay for a home is permanent, that you negotiate and you offer and is accepted. The interest rate can change, meaning if it's fixed, it's fixed, but you can always change that in the future. Yes, it's going to cost some money to refinance at some point, title work appraisal, what have you, but that can change. So that's kind of my word of advice to people.
Mhm. So buy, a good time to buy. On the flip side, Kayla, when is a good time to sell?
Hmm. I'm very curious. When do you think the best time to sell is, Andy?
I think the best time to sell is whenever it works for you and your goals and whatever's going on in life. But, if you are a little bit indifferent, or, hey, anytime's a good time, what would work best? The Close put out an article here that talked about the best and worst times to sell a house going into 2025. The
Hmm.
best months: April, May, June, July, August, September, and October. The worst, pretty much November through March. What do
Hmm.
you think about that?
I feel like it depends on where you're located because I've got friends down in Arizona and they're telling me, oh my gosh, when we do new construction, we don't want to be working out in these months, but you guys are just starting, it kind of depends. But
Right.
ultimately, I think people just don't want to move in the winter. Um, I think that it's holidays and it's difficult. And we know what it's like to have multiple blizzards impacting people coming through to see homes. So I relate it to weather, but what do you relate it to? Because that's your expertise.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, we do work predominantly with sellers versus buyers. So it is actually interesting, when we're conversing behind the scenes and, just sometimes seeing slightly different things just based on the clientele we work with. So, again, like I said, I think whenever it makes sense, it's a good time. But yeah, in our area historically, getting in on the spring or the busy summer market or even into the fall, it's a really, really great time to sell a home.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right in the Arizona piece. And I was talking to our friend Derek Brandenburg not long ago and just about, them relocating to Arizona, and really the summer in Arizona is almost like winter. People try
Yeah,
to stay indoors. Like,
I know.
it is just so scorching hot. I think a great business would be to be in the air conditioning business, because I'm sure that you could stay pretty busy with all of the service requests.
Really could. Or
But of
the pool
course,
maintenance business.
yeah, exactly. But we of course see people around here, that are kind of, they're, hey, I'm done with winter. I'm kind of thinking about my goals. And hey, I want to sell. I want to get in on the busy spring and summer market. Or like even this time of year, people who said, hey, lake property, we're done with the lake property. We want to put it on the market. We've thought long and hard about it and finally made the decision, to kind of go and get rid of it. With that being said, I've had plenty of, sales and closings that have been in the winter months, and even have seen some strong demand for a really, really appealing property as well. But, even this particular graphic, Kayla, kind of shows, as we move through the summer into fall and into winter, things kind of dwindling and then an uptick in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's very accurate. And I think a lot of the activity I see in like December, it's new home builds being finished, where they complete what they can and they finish the insides. Usually like my Decembers are pretty big because of that reason, or people want to get, for the tax benefits, they want to just get it done that year. So, but again, it's a product of usually 60 days prior, give or take. If we're getting a purchase agreement, we're usually closing it 30, 60 days later. So it's usually a product of that October, November. But yeah, those stats don't surprise me. I feel like that's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Kayla, we have kind of covered a variety of things here today. So I think that puts a wrap on episode 54. Of course, if anyone has any questions or wants to talk buying, selling, or anything in between, reach out. Otherwise, Kayla, I hope you have a really great weekend and we'll connect with you soon.
Sounds like a plan, Andy. We'll see you later.
See ya. Bye-bye.